Viewer discretion is advised.
The A's, Mark McGwire and Jose Canseco injecting each other in their asses in the bathrooms with steroids. I said steroids. Only got one championship with that stacked team. How did you lose to the Reds? And Moneyball hasn't gotten you a ring either. Of course, before that, you traded away Reggie Jackson and Catfish Hunter for nothing. And then Ricky Henderson's self-aggrandizing "I'm the greatest ever" speech, which was overshadowed by Nolan Ryan throwing his 7th no-hitter later that evening. Ha ha! This soon-to-be baseball-only stadium suffers one of the most unusual side effects of being a multi-use venue: huge foul areas. It is unknown whether they plan on filling in the vast farmland with seating when the Raiders take off on a bender for Las Vegas. The park suffered a sewage leak in 2013 where liquid excrement literally spewed into the dugout, which perfectly describes their play back then. They're doing okay this. Bobby Shantz was a control pitcher, the Greg Maddux of his day. I don't think he was hitting his spots this game, as he got lit up for 9 runs in 1.2 innings of work. To his credit, he only walked 1 batter. None of his teammates were any better, as they all gave up at least 2 runs. The Sox hit 7 home runs, led by Bob Neiman with 2. It's funny when a guy who threw a perfect game rats himself out like Dallas Braden did on Baseball Tonight. But there was no bigger blowing off of a lid than what Jose Canseco did to all of Major League Baseball in confirming what any sentient human being that could tell him apart from his twin brother already knew. The A's were shooting up steroids like Nikki Sixx doing heroin, apparently in the locker room before the game. His Clary ended up with the confessions of others, most notably fellow Bash brother Mark McGwire. But hey, we got that Netflix wrap, so silver linings, right? Have a seat on this couch made of horse. Our lowest ranked facility gets that distinction because the outfield dimensions may seem familiar here. Wait a minute, why does the A's field look like Wrigley? Oh, it's because this used to belong to the Cubs up until 2013, and I guess the A's never bothered to change it up. The Oakland Athletics, always being thrifty with the cash. Ho-Ho Cam does have the largest scoreboard in the Cactus League. The Oakland A's have more failed stadium proposals than Larry King had failed marriages. In fact, the story of why they are left with the aging Coliseum is so sad. I'm probably going to give them their own video on it. But in 2010, San Jose tried to tempt the A's to move a little closer to Google with this gorgeous neoclassic baseball-only ballpark. The A's had previously tried to move to Fremont, but the town didn't even want them. San Jose didn't have a problem with the A's, but you know who did? The Giants. After repeatedly refusing to ease their territory rights, eventually the city of San Jose sued them, and in 2015 the case got all the way to the United States Supreme Court. And just like the Sharks, San Jose lost. The A's are still stuck in the shithole in Oakland. Here it is, MLB's dinosaur, the last relic of a bygone era where baseball and football coexisted in a stadium about as well as rational takes and Twitter. Not even a hot take, this is the ugliest looking ballpark, as it was never designed for baseball, and its mega renovation was done for a football team that left. The saddest part is, the thing that makes this place great, the fans are so pissed at the team that this is what games look like now. It's just a sad situation all around. That's all I can say.
Dire Straits. The league's first work stoppage in over 25 years is underway. And with how cordial they were before the 2020 season, I'm worried it's going to be a long haul before anything gets done. Both ownership and the players' union are incredibly stubborn but have valid points to their arguments. Baseball itself has hemorrhaged money due to COVID and fan restrictions. The players have been getting consistently lowballed in salary due to collusion. There are many teams skirting by with bare-bones payrolls, and there is a deep chasm between the two sides. When the players' union thinks of the ills of baseball, they use the A's as their Exhibit A. At first glance, sure, Oakland is a good team and they're usually competitive, but it's been in spite of themselves. Their argument is if the A's could actually spend on players, there may be a chance for them to be more than competitive. It could have helped them in scenarios like this past year, when they were a good team but nothing that screamed World Series contenders. I want you to consider their offseason moves. When they cheaped the fuck out on bringing back Liam Hendricks and Marcus Semien. Instead, they chose to purchase the great value versions of those players in Trevor Rosenthal and Elvis Andrus in the vain attempt at being competitive. There's an old adage that says you get what you pay for. Oakland tried to save money for inferior products? Then they will get season-ending hip surgery before a pitch is thrown and near replacement-level production with declining defense at short. They really could have used Hendricks and Semien in 2021. Hendricks continues to be his dominant self, piecing together an all-star caliber performance to bolster a White Sox bullpen and lead the league in saves. His contract, despite it being rich for a closer, is looking to be worth every penny for Southside. Semien, on the other hand, had a career season with the Blue Jays. Let's put it this way. He did so well he set the home run record for a second baseman. And he won a Gold Glove there too. As a result of this tremendous campaign, he was paid a vast fortune by the Texas Rangers. You remember them? Oakland is so thinly strung together that one slight misfortune could send them tumbling over the edge. Turns out it wasn't a slight but a severe one to Chris Bassett. It felt like his injury was symbolic in so many ways. Once he went down, the team did as well. A mass collapse into August and September, not only taking them out of the wildcard race, but apparently any sort of respect for the organization whatsoever. The stereotype of Oakland baseball. Always good, but never good enough to do anything significant. It's been torture, but at this point you honestly wish it ended there. If the on-field product were the only problem, then this video wouldn't be a thing. But we all know that's an optimistic way of thinking. The A's have been treating the city of Oakland like shit for a while now. Kind of like how the Seattle Mariners relentlessly clowned them this past season. Even if you choose to go surface level in your observations, you know something was wrong. Bob Melvin has been a respected manager in this game for a good bit. He's as decorated as a 4-star general with how many times he's been in the running for AL Manager of the Year. But something unexpected happened this offseason. He took a trip down the 5 to San Diego to accept the same position with the Padres. The A's simply allowed him to leave when he was under contract. And he was able to take a few of his assistants with him. What kind of playoff contender does this, you ask? One that doesn't want to be one anymore. Melvin saw the writing on the wall. He even admitted as such. Their next manager will probably be a cheaper version of Melvin because that's all this organization is good for. You can't expect Billy Beane to be of much assistance these days. When looking at his actions, it feels like he's already got one foot out the door. He wants a new challenge. Chasing that rainbow for so long to come up short has worn him out. The time he has left with the A's may be limited. But that's not all the concern. Think team payroll. Ownership is tired of spending money when they can spend less and get just as many people to not show up. The popular consensus is Oakland shedding payroll down to $50 million next season. Some have speculated that the A's might go as low as $40 million in team salary. For reference, their team payroll was over $80 million last season, and would probably go well above $90 million in 2022 if they didn't make a single move. So that means pieces have to go. Their trade deadline acquisitions and vets like Mark Canha are already gone. Matt Olson, Chris Bassett, Sean Manaea, and Matt Chapman are due big raises in arbitration. Not to mention countless others looking for a bounty. Even a child could put 2 and 2 together. They're going to be trading off pieces. Maybe a lot of them considering how many holes they need to fill. A's brass can make the excuse that they're doing it to bolster their now depleted farm system. Everyone will love it, they tell themselves. Except the fans, that is. The A's faithful have long had a distrust of John Fisher and company, and for very good reason. Fisher's a businessman. He only worries if the Athletics are making a profit or are fiscally solvent. The performance on the field is secondary. Consider this question. If a team plays a baseball game and no one shows up to it, is it still technically played? It may have been a perfect storm, but nearly every single home game for most of the year was all but a sea of empty green seats. Their attendance figures make the Tampa Bay Rays look healthy in comparison. Do teams in the middle of a playoff push who buy at the deadline with quality names and offer a compelling product play in stadiums so barren that Death Valley is more vibrant? You get the right camera angle, you'd think you were watching footage from the 2020 season. It's DEFCON 1 here. Take series against the White Sox in Texas. In those games, they only cracked the 8,000 ticket threshold once. The Rangers series was a weekender, by the way. In their final homestand of the season, they were barely cracking 4,000 tickets sold per game against Seattle. This was a series against a division rival with major playoff implications, and they can barely reach 10% occupancy. The weekend matches against Houston had a hard time hitting 10,000 fans in 2 of the 3 games. Their final home series of the season generated next to nothing. And before you go off talking about COVID restrictions, those were lifted in late June for the A's. The games I mentioned were in September. This goes significantly deeper than any standard discussed. This is a borderline fan revolt. They've had enough of all the shit that Fisher and his band of businessmen have pulled on the city and thrown upon the A's. And it's not like they're doing much to win the fans over. This past year, the A's cut perks to their season ticket program, jacked up seat prices, marked up concessions and parking as well, all the while dropping local marketing to a trickle. When you consider the payroll cuts, from what it looks to me, they're sandbagging. They're trying to make the product as unappealing as possible while pricing out anyone who would like to go. It's to artificially create fan apathy, so when it's time to move out, they don't get a mass backlash from fans. More of a meh, fuck off feeling. Why the hell would anyone want to go to fucking Oko and deal with god-awful traffic and parking issues when they manage to have any sort of crowd? I could drive across the bay to San Fran and not only get a much better stadium experience, but a cheaper one. How are you pricier than San Francisco? I'm not dismissing ownership's angle. There is no argument from anyone that the A's desperately need a new stadium. Oakland Coliseum may have a new name, but it's still as much of an atrocity to sport as it ever was. It's a failed relic of an age that promised efficiency, but the stadiums that were built weren't even that efficient. Oko makes Tropicana Field seem like paradise. Its only purposes are crippling depression and turning into a literal toilet. But here's where the problems begin. Despite their needs, the A's have burned their political capital in Oakland. They strong-armed the city into renewing a team-friendly 10-year lease back in 2014 where, deep breath, they threatened to move the team. Every stadium proposal brought up has either been shot down or stalled out so far. It's mostly because of stubbornness from ownership. The newest proposal in discussion is Howard Terminal. Ideally, it's a great concept. Much more accessible to Oaklanders, the design and planning is solid, and it's all at a garish $12 billion price tag. If they want Oakland to take on a chunk of the cost, they are mistaken. The city has massive issues that are well documented. Failing infrastructure, rampant homelessness, and affordable housing prices, steep budgetary cuts to nearly every sector. Oakland runs a deficit of tens of millions of dollars every year. The federal government has to infuse them to the tune of 9 figures for the city to function. It's not that they don't want to help with the project, it's that they can't. Aiding a private stadium before anything else would be political suicide. They're trying to come to an agreement, but without political capital, Oakland wants something in return for their funding and land. They want any potential development to feature affordable housing. It's noble, but they'll never get it. As a businessman, that addition is a deal breaker. Why should I settle for this offer when I can get a better one 5 miles down the road? That town they're looking at is a place called Las Vegas. Oakland may have heard of it, considering they lost the Raiders to them a few years ago. A's executives have met with city officials there several times over the past year. And all signs point to guys like John Fisher having a massive hard-on for their new lust. They're looking at several land plots for stadium development, and have even agreed to play in their city's AAA stadium until the new digs are complete. I don't know if Las Vegas is going to throw as much money around as they did for the Raiders, but they seem quite keen on punting future budgetary issues down the road for the sake of prestige. It's a perfect match, and sadly the A's have all the leverage in this situation. They know that if they moved, Oakland would be losing their third sports franchise in less than 5 years. We know about the Raiders move, but people tend to forget that the Warriors moved to the western part of the Bay in San Francisco. It's a shitty part of business in sport, but an inevitable one. It leads to a lot of heartbreak. But John Fisher and his men are seemingly flaunting it. When team president Dave Cobble is publicly boasting about attending Vegas Golden Knights games on his Twitter account, when the A's were playing a game, while previously sabotaging other stadium proposals due to his incompetence, I don't think that looks too good for those in Oakland. A's fans, I wish I had any sense of optimism about the team. I want to tell you that all is going to be well, but it probably won't. Barring a sudden change of heart on both sides, there's a good chance the A's are going to be moving out of Oakland in the next few years. It will probably be Las Vegas they pack their bags for, but there may be another suitor or two. When you consider every single element, as a businessman, there is no reason for you to stay put. You can get a significantly better offer elsewhere. If Oakland somehow grovels at the team's feet, all it costs is decades of the city being in even more crippling debt. That part I understand, but it still doesn't suck any less for the fans that survived all the bullshit. A massive chasm has been widening between ownership and fandom for decades. And it's now come to a head. Do you want to know the worst part? When they finally get their new publicly funded shrine, wherever it is, they're going to open up the checkbook and spend like no tomorrow to lure people to the ballpark. Cynical corporatism at its best. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Don't feel too shitty about it, Oakland. You can call this your own version of Moneyball towards affordable housing.